The story starts with our protagonist Luke was the eldest son of a powerful lord, and everyone expected him to get a strong combat skill. However, during his blessing ceremony he received a weird skill called village building. Since it wasn't useful for war, his family immediately lost interest in him. On the other hand, his younger brother Rael, who was the son of a maid, got the legendary Sword Saint skill. Their father was thrilled and made Rael the new heir, while Luke was basically kicked out. Luke was sent to a dangerous, empty wasteland in the north to develop it. This was a death sentence in disguise, but Luke didn't mind because he never liked fighting anyway. Only one person followed him, a loyal maid named Milia. She was a beautiful woman who promised to stay by his side forever, though she secretly thought Luke was adorable and wanted to be close to him. Once they reached the barren land, a mysterious floating text appeared in front of Luke. It was a guide for his village building skill. He realized he could build structures instantly using village points. To test it out, he spent some points, and a wooden hut suddenly popped out of the ground. Milia was shocked but impressed. Next, Milia insisted they needed water to survive. Luke used more points, and a stone well appeared out of nowhere. He then officially added Milia as a villager, which actually increased the number of points he earned every day. The next morning, Luke used his new points to create a large farm field with perfect soil. As Milia started planting seeds, Luke realized his useless skill was actually amazing. He decided to turn this empty desert into a peaceful home where he could live a quiet life. Luke used to be a noble's son, but now he lives in a small, empty wasteland. Instead of acting like a lord, he decides to help a girl named Milia with the farming. Milia is the first person to join his village and helps him with daily chores. As they plant seeds together, Luke realizes that growing food is much harder than he ever thought. Meanwhile, a girl named Saren is in a lot of trouble at her own home. She is a powerful fighter known as the Ice Sword Princess, and was supposed to marry Luke. However, when Luke received a useless gift and was kicked out, her father tried to force her to marry Luke's mean brother, Raoul. Saren couldn't stand Raoul's personality, so she fought her way past the palace guards and ran away to find Luke. Back at the settlement, Luke's special village building gift is making things grow much faster than normal. He uses points he earns every day to build wooden walls and a watchtower to keep the place safe. Suddenly, a pack of goblins tries to climb over the walls. Luke grabs his sword to fight, but before he can do anything, ice arrows fly through the air and take down all the monsters. Saren has finally arrived at the village. Milia and Saren immediately start arguing over who is closer to Luke. To make life easier for everyone, Luke spends his saved-up points to build a proper house. This isn't a normal house. It has modern things like a kitchen with hot water and a flush toilet. The girls are shocked because they have never seen technology like this before. When it's time to sleep, a new problem starts. There is only one big bed, and neither girl wants to sleep alone or next to each other. They both insist on sleeping right next to Luke. He ends up stuck in the middle of them, feeling totally awkward and unable to get any rest. A month passes, and the village is doing great. The crops are growing so fast that they have more food than they can eat. To make sure nothing goes to waste, Saren uses her ice magic to turn their new storehouse into a giant freezer to keep the food fresh for a long time. Hold up! Smash like and subscribe for more hidden manga gems. Now, I dare you to comment, "I'm loving it." I bet most of you won't do it. Alright, let's continue. Everything seems to be going smoothly as their small community grows. Saren was feeling pretty proud of herself after hunting some wild boar, but Milia quickly shut her down, pointing out that Saren's cooking was actually terrible. Luke had to step in to stop their bickering before it got out of hand. Just then, Saren noticed something moving in the distance. She climbed the watchtower and saw a group of about 50 people heading toward the village. They looked completely worn out, wearing rags and moving slowly. These people were refugees who had lost their homes to war and hunger. Their leader was a man named Burlet, who was so thin he looked like a skeleton. Luke didn't think twice and invited them all in. Seeing how thirsty they were, Luke used his special village points to spawn a second well instantly. Milia cooked up the boar meat and the starving group finally got a real meal. Because so many people joined the village at once, the village level jumped straight to level 3. This gave Luke a huge boost in points and unlocked new skills like villager appraisal and the ability to move buildings around. To make sure everyone had a place to stay, Luke used his points to build large row houses. The refugees were stunned to see buildings appearing out of thin air, realizing Luke possessed a very rare and powerful gift. The next day, Luke used his new appraisal skill to check the background of the new villagers. He found out that Burlet's brother, Barrett, was a natural-born warrior with a hidden talent for sword fighting. Even more surprising, he found several other commoners with latent magical powers. Usually only rich nobles have these kinds of gifts, so finding this many talented people in one group was unheard of. Even his friends had impressive stats. Saren was a perfect fit for a general, and Milia had a secret oracle gift that made her a natural priest. With all this new talent, the small village was starting to look like a real power in the making. Luke has a special power called Villager Appraisal that lets him see everyone's stats. He finds out that Milia, a 21-year-old girl who really cares about the village, has a hidden gift called Oracle. This rare power allows her to give blessings and gifts to others, but she needs to be blessed at a church first. The problem is that the nearest church is too far away and costs too much money. Luke decides to tell Milia and a tough fighter girl named Saren about his secret power. Milia is happy to help, though she and Saren keep playfully fighting over who gets more of Luke's attention. A few weeks later, the village has its first harvest. Even though it's only been a month, the vegetables are massive and taste better than anything they've ever eaten. Luke uses his village points to build a big outdoor kitchen so everyone can enjoy a feast. During the party, a man named Donga arrives with 40 refugees. Donga is an old friend of Burlet, one of the farmers already living there. Luke welcomes them all, bringing the population to 97. Soon after, another 70 refugees show up. Luke's internal guide tells him that if the village hits 100 people, it will level up. Luke accepts the newcomers and the village hits level 4. This doubles the size of the village and unlocks new buildings like shops, workshops, and a church. Luke also gets a new skill that helps him detect any intruders. He spends his points to build the church right away so Milia can finally unlock her oracle gift. Inside the new church, Milia prays and successfully gains her power. Now she can grant gifts to other villagers who have hidden potential. She starts by blessing a 32-year-old man named Barrett with sword technique. Other villagers receive powers like Master Farmer for better crops, green magic to control the weather, and spear technique. The village is now a busy place with 173 people. Most of the residents are young women, and they love to tease Luke because he's a young and cute chief. Even though he's only 15, everyone in the village thinks Milia and Saren are his wives, and the two girls don't seem to mind the rumors. In the village square, Saren starts training the men in combat. Because of their new gifts, men like Barrett and a newcomer named Perun become expert fighters in no time. Even their young children have inherited these fighting skills. Luke checks the rest of the new group and finds even more people with gifts like giant strength, danger detection, and poison resistance. With so many powered-up people, the village is becoming much stronger and safer. Luke is the chief of a village that is growing fast. One of the kids there, a big 13-year-old named Noel, gets a super rare gift called Shield Holy Art. He is a kind boy and promises to use his high defense to protect Luke. Around the same time, the village priestess Milia tells all the workers that Luke is actually a savior sent by the gods. The villagers believe her and start working like crazy because they respect him so much. Luke has no clue about this savior talk, but he notices everyone is suddenly very motivated and the village is improving quickly. The village hunting team, led by a girl named Saren, is also getting much stronger and starts hunting bigger monsters. While they are busy, a group of scared refugees shows up. They explain that a mean gang of bandits is nearby, catching people to sell them. One bandit scout named Bale tries to sneak into the village to check things out. However, Luke has a new skill that works like a radar for intruders. He finds Bale hiding in the fields, and Saren uses her magic to freeze him on the spot. They throw Bale into a cell to get answered. An old lady in the village, who happens to be an expert at making people talk, scares him so much that he reveals everything. Bale explains that his bandit friends are already coming, and they have a guy who can send messages using his mind. He had already told his boss that the village was an easy target full of women and children. The bandit group, led by a huge boss with a giant axe, finally reaches the village at night. They think they are about to have an easy win and charge through the front gate, but it was a trap. Instead of a clear path, they all fall into a deep moat filled with water hidden right behind the entrance. As the bandits struggle to stay afloat, the water starts turning into ice, trapping them right where they are. The water in the moat suddenly turned into ice, trapping the bandits where they stood. Their plan was falling apart and they couldn't even move. The bandit leader, a massive guy with a huge axe, didn't care about the cold and pushed through to the shore. He went straight for Selen, a blue-haired girl who was using her ice magic to freeze the water. Selen wasn't just a magic user though, she was also amazing with sword. This rare combo of skills, known as a double gift, let her dodge the leader's heavy attacks and land several hits. While they fought, the rest of the bandits tried to scramble onto the shore. However, the villagers were ready for them. Led by a fighter named Barrett, the villagers used their own special combat skills to knock the freezing bandits right back into the water. Meanwhile, Selen finished her fight. Her ice magic had chilled the bandit leader's body so much that he couldn't move his muscles anymore. He collapsed and admitted defeat. Seeing their boss go down, the rest of the bandits gave up and were captured. Luke, the village chief, watched the whole thing from a tower. The victory was actually part of a big setup. They had captured a bandit named Bale earlier, and used a scary old grandma, who could see through any lie, to force him into giving the bandits wrong information. With the fight over, Luke also rescued nearly 100 people the bandits had been holding captive. These people joined the village, bringing the total population to over 260. The village's magical guide then suggested something unexpected. Instead of getting rid of the bandits, Luke should turn them into villagers and put them in a special rehabilitation center to fix their behavior. Luke agreed, and this growth pushed the village to level 5. This level up gave Luke a new power called facility customization, which let him change the shape, color, and size of any building instantly. Luke immediately got to work improving the village. He replaced the old dirt walls with strong stone ones and upgraded his own house into a large 2-story building. He used his new power to add extra beds to the room. Up until now, he had been sharing a bed with his friends Millia and Selen, which was pretty awkward, so he was glad to finally have his own space. To make life better for everyone, Luke used his points to build a massive public bathhouse. Most people in this world had never seen anything like it, so Luke showed the facility to Burlet, the man who helped coordinate the villagers. The bathhouse had separate sections for men and women and a giant tub filled with hot water. Luke explained that everyone could use it to stay clean and relax, marking a huge step forward for the village's comfort and safety. Luke, the village chief with a facility customization gift, just finished making a public bathhouse. It was a huge hit, especially with the women. One guy tried to peek and ended up in a prison cell after the village women gave him a solid beating. The women in this village are pretty tough, and they even teased Luke so much that he had to run away. To improve the village defenses, Luke added stairs to the stone walls using his skill so people could climb up fast during an emergency. He also tried making holes in the walls to poke enemies with spears, but he realized the village was seriously low on actual weapons. To fix this, Luke used his skill on an old wooden hut. He literally pulled a wooden sword out of the wall. It was a fast way to craft, but when Saren, the leader of the hunting team, tested it with a swordsman named Barrett, the wooden sword snapped easily. It just wasn't strong enough for a real fight. Around this time, the scary village grandma brought back the first group of bandits from her rehabilitation facility. These guys looked completely broken and had zero energy left. Millia, the village priest, stepped in to guide them and give them some purpose so they wouldn't just give up on life. Luke then had a better idea for weapons. He went to the jail and used the iron bars to craft better gear. He stretched and compressed the metal into sharp blades and attached wooden handles from the hut. The new iron swords and spears were a total success. Land, a spear expert, and Barrett were so impressed they wanted to keep the weapons as treasures instead of using them. Luke had to mass-produce them just so the team would actually take them into battle. One bandit named Satin tried to use his telepathy gift to trick Luke. He pretended to be a sorry ex-noble who wanted to help the village, but Luke used his appraisal skill and saw that Satin was actually feeling rebellious. Luke didn't fall for the act and sent him straight to Grandma for some extra special training. Later that night, Luke tried to get Millia and Saren to sleep in their own new beds, but they ignored him and crowded into his bed anyway. The next day things turned serious. Saren and the hunting team didn't come back from the forest on time. Since they usually hunt almaregi, which are giant, dangerous rabbits with sharp horns, everyone started getting worried as it got dark. The hunting team, led by a girl named Saren, returned to the village with a massive catch. They brought back 2 huge orcs, which are pig-headed monsters over 2 meters tall. One of the men with a giant strength gift was even carrying a whole orc by himself. Luke was impressed by their power and decided to throw a big barbecue for everyone. Orc meat is usually a luxury for rich people, but here, the villagers got to eat their fill. The meat was incredibly delicious and way better than the stuff Luke had at his old home because it was so fresh. The village's farming was also doing great. Thanks to the Master Farmer gift, the vegetables were growing to crazy sizes. Carrots were as big as legs and cabbages were larger than people. Since it was summer, Saren used her ice magic to freeze the extra food so it wouldn't rot in the heat. Burlet, the man in charge of the refugees, asked Luke if they could bring the elderly parents they had left behind in their old villages. Luke agreed immediately, knowing they had enough food to support everyone. Some former bandits who had become very peaceful and loyal after spending time with a girl named Millia at the church volunteered to help as guards. Luke was shocked to see how much these once dangerous men had changed into helpful villagers. A few days later, the team returned with the elderly parents, leading to many happy reunions. They also brought back more refugees and a new group of bandits they had captured. The reformed bandits actually started lecturing the new prisoners, telling them how great Luke was and that they should be happy to be there. Later, 2 new men named Mac and Manta arrived at the village. Mac was an old village chief from the south, and Manta was his son. They were stunned to see massive stone walls surrounding a beautiful village in the middle of a wasteland. They told Luke that his old family, the Albals, were raising taxes to an impossible level to pay for a new war. Luke explained that he had been sent there as an exile because his family thought his gift was useless, but things clearly turned out well. Luke invited Mac and his people to move to the village, promising they would have plenty of food. Just then, Saren's team came back from another hunt with 3 more dead orcs. Mac and Manta were terrified at first, but they soon realized that this village was safer and more successful than any place they had ever seen. Luke watched as Saren dragged a massive monster called a great boa into the village. It was over 5 meters long with huge teeth. Noel, who has a special shield gift, and Goat, a man with super strength, helped her take it down. Mac and his son Manta were stunned. They had never seen such a big monster defeated so easily. They were also shocked to see how clean and rich the village looked, with its stone walls and happy people. Soon, everyone from Mac's village moved in. Luke used his special power to build a row of houses instantly, which left the newcomers speechless. As word spread about this heavenly place, more people arrived to escape the heavy taxes of the kingdom. Even the former bandits were now working for the village. Satan, a former thief with the power of telepathy, helped keep watch. However, 2 prisoners remained. One was Doriel, the former bandit boss who only respected strength. He agreed to help only if Saren, the girl who beat him, gave the orders. The other was Bale, a strange man who actually enjoyed being punished, which was too weird even for the village elders. With over 1,000 people now living there, the village reached level 6. Luke gained a new skill that allowed him to take over nearby land. He also unlocked new buildings like schools, underground tunnels, and big apartment blocks made of strong material. He even planted an orchard so everyone could have fresh fruit, which was usually a luxury. While Luke was relaxing in a large outdoor bath with Saren and Milia, a man named Dant was approaching. Dant was a local leader who worked for Luke's father. He noticed his own villages were becoming empty because everyone was running away to Luke's village. Worried and curious, Dant headed into the wasteland with his strongest warrior, Bazara, to see this mysterious city for himself. Just as Luke was enjoying the warm water, he got a mental message that the magistrate's army had arrived at the gates. Luke was the eldest son of the noble Alvil family, but everyone looked down on him. While his younger brother Raoul received a legendary sword saint gift, Luke was kicked out and sent to a dead wasteland because his family thought he was useless. A local official named Danto and his lead guard, Bazara, eventually went to the wasteland to see how Luke was doing. They expected to find him struggling in the dirt, but instead, they saw a massive city with giant stone walls that looked like a powerful fortress. Inside the walls, the place was even more shocking. Even though it was the middle of winter, the fields were full of giant, healthy crops. The roads were perfectly paved, and the villagers lived in modern apartment buildings with clean water and flush toilets. Luke met them and explained that his gift was actually called village building. This power allowed him to build structures, grow food, and create a city out of nothing in just a few months. To celebrate the visit, Luke threw a big party with lots of food and drinks. Danto and Bazara were stunned to see the villagers eating orc meat, which came from monsters that are usually very hard to kill. During the party, the villagers showed off their skills in a mock fight. Danto and Bazara realized that almost every person there had a rare combat gift. This village was actually a top-tier military force. Bazara admitted that even their own elite army would be wiped out if they ever tried to fight Luke's people. Danto realized that if the Alvil family found out about this, especially the jealous brother Raoul, they would be terrified of Luke's growth. Raoul would likely try to destroy the village before it became too powerful to handle. To protect Luke and keep the peace, Danto decided to hide the truth. He chose not to report anything about the city's true strength to the main family, keeping Luke's incredible progress a secret. Luke was a guy from another world who got kicked out of his noble family because they thought his village building power was trash. He ended up in a wasteland, turning it into a paradise. A village official named Dant, who used to work for Luke's mean family, realized Luke was the real deal. He decided to secretly help Luke instead of Luke's arrogant brother. Luke actually heard this while hiding nearby. The next morning, Dant asked Luke for help because people in the north were starving. Luke didn't just agree to sell them food. He used his power to instantly build a long, smooth road through the wilderness to make trading easier. Soon after, a hunter named Saren came back with a big surprise. Her team had saved a group of elves from a pack of angry giant bears. The elves were led by a tall, beautiful warrior named Philia. To show her thanks, Philia gave Luke 10 bottles of super rare healing potion. The elves were amazed by the village's big apartment buildings, which were way better than anything they had seen. Luke invited the elves to try the village baths. In their culture, men and women bathed together, which was pretty awkward for Luke, but the elves didn't mind. Philia was just happy to have hot water without worrying about monsters attacking her in a river. Later at dinner, Philia went to the bathroom and let out a loud scream. She had accidentally pressed a button on the magic toilet, and it sprayed water on her. Luke explained that his special power created these washlets to keep everyone clean. Philia loved the idea so much she kept going back to the bathroom. The next morning, as the elves were getting ready to leave, Luke heard Philia making some very happy noises inside the bathroom. She was clearly having a great time with that magic toilet one last time. Luke was a young guy who had been sent away to a wasteland, but he used his special building powers to turn it into a thriving village. After helping some elves, a group of merchants arrived. led by a man named Brookley. Brookley was a successful businessman who couldn't believe such a nice village existed in the middle of nowhere. They traded supplies like seeds and clothes for the village's giant, delicious vegetable. Luke also bought cows and goats from them and put a girl named Nurlu in charge of them. Nurlu had a special gift called animal hearts that let her understand exactly how animals felt, and the livestock felt right at home immediately. Meanwhile, a major crisis hit the elven settlement deep in the forest. A massive group of orcs, which are giant pig-headed monsters, broke through their defenses. The elves were panicking, but their lead warrior Philia stayed cool and ordered everyone to run south. They barely escaped, but the hungry orcs chased them out of the forest and into the open fields. Without trees to hide in, the elves were in big trouble because the orcs were faster in the open. Philia hoped Luke's village could save them and sent a messenger ahead to ask for help. From his high watchtower, Luke saw the elves being chased and used his powers to pop up stone walls in the distance to slow the monsters down. Once the elves made it to the village, Luke didn't just hide behind the gates. He set a clever trap. He built 2 long stone walls that created a narrow, straight path leading right to the village entrance. The orcs were so hungry and angry that they didn't think twice and charged straight into this narrow lane, thinking they finally had the elves trapped. As the orcs packed into the tight space, Luke started moving the giant stone walls toward each other. The path got narrower and narrower by the second. The elves at the end of the road shot arrows to keep the front row of orcs from moving forward. Before the monsters could escape or break the walls, the 2 sides closed in completely, finishing off most of the horde in one go. Even though the trap worked, some orcs were still alive under the mess, so Luke told the village men to grab their spears and get ready to finish the job. Luke used his special building powers to trap the orc horde between 2 massive stone walls. He made small holes in the walls, so the villagers could safely stab the orcs with spears from the other side. The plan worked perfectly, and the entire group of monsters was wiped out in one go. The elves, who were watching the whole thing, were completely shocked by how easily the village won. Saren, a skilled fighter and Luke's close friend, was impressed by his clever strategy. Just as they thought it was over, a giant monster showed up. It was the Orc King, a massive and super fast version of a normal orc. He was furious and charged straight at Luke. Luke tried to build more walls to stop him, but the monster was so strong he smashed right through them. To make things worse, Luke ran out of building points and was stuck as the monster rushed toward him. Right before the Orc King could reach Luke, 2 of his best defenders, Noel and Goat, jumped in with their heavy iron shields. They were knocked back by the monster's incredible strength but managed to slow him down. Then Doriel, a big guy who used to lead a bandit gang but is now helping the village, joined the fight with his own shield. With 3 strong guys holding the line, Saren and the others started hitting the monster with magic and arrows. The Orc King was getting tired and hurt, but he was still very dangerous. Suddenly, Luke received his daily bonus points. He quickly built a thick stone box around the monster so he couldn't move. Then he used his powers to drop a heavy stone tower right on top of the Orc King. The massive weight of the tower finished him off for good. After the battle, everyone celebrated their victory. Luke used healing potions on the injured fighters and met the leader of the elves, Leoninus, who is also the father of an elf girl named Philia. The elves were worried they would be punished for accidentally bringing the orcs to the village, but Luke was very kind. Instead of being angry, he invited all the hungry elves to a big barbecue party. The elves were amazed by how nice the village was. They loved the warm baths, soft beds, and especially the modern toilets. Since the orcs had destroyed the elf village, Luke invited all 200 of them to stay in his village for the winter. He even built new apartments for them in seconds using his power. Later, Luke visited the ruined elf settlement and decided to make things even better by building a safe underground path to connect the 2 villages. Luke is busy expanding his village using a special skill called territory raiding. He claims a new area and decides to link it to his main base by building a massive underground tunnel. He spends a lot of his saved up points to make a staircase and a long passage that goes straight to the elf village. Philia, the elf warrior commander who is 114 years old but looks young, is completely shocked by his power. She realizes that with this tunnel, travel is now super easy, but she secretly wants the work to slow down because she's grown to love staying in Luke's comfortable village. Meanwhile, back in the main kingdom, Luke's brother Raoul is busy proving how strong he is. Raoul is the one who got the Sword Saint gift that Luke was supposed to have, which is why Luke was kicked out. Raoul enters a cage to fight several dangerous death row prisoners who used to be mercenaries. He moves so fast that the prisoners can't even see him before he ends them. He is incredibly arrogant and laughs at the rumors of a village in the wilderness, thinking Luke must have died in the cold long ago. Raoul is also annoyed because Saren, a noble girl who was supposed to marry him, has run away and can't be found. He's planning to start a massive war in the spring to take over even more land. Back in the wilderness, winter arrives with heavy snow. To keep the village running, Luke uses his building powers to create a special road that automatically clears snow. This keeps the path open for merchants and new refugees who are looking for a place to stay. The village has become so high-tech and cozy that it feels like a luxury resort. It has warm beds, great food, and big public baths. Even the elven chief, Leoninus, who is over 300 years old, has become addicted to the village's modern toilets. He and his daughter Philia have actually spent so much time using the high-tech washlets that they've started having some painful bathroom issues, though they're too embarrassed to tell Luke the truth. As spring finally comes, the work to fix the original elf village is finished. Leoninus thanks Luke for all his help during the winter. However, there's a surprise. Even though their old home is ready, many of the elves have realized that living in the dangerous forest is much worse than staying in Luke's village. Leoninus tells Luke that a large group of elves actually wants to stay and live there permanently, because they can't imagine going back to a life without the comforts Luke has built. This marks a new chapter as the village continues to grow into a powerful and diverse community. The elves realized their old village was nothing compared to this new place. They had delicious food, hot baths, and comfortable beds. When the chief Leoninus tried to lead them back home, not a single person followed him. Even his daughter Philia chose to stay. Seeing he was all alone, Leoninus gave up and decided to live in the village too. Just like that, over 200 elves officially joined the community. A bit later, a group of dwarves arrived from the high mountains in the east. Usually, dwarves are known for being loud and bold, but these guys were incredibly shy and nervous. Their leader, Dran, told Luke they had been living in caves but had to flee because a terrifying monster, a giant snake-like creature, showed up and started attacking them. They were hungry and had nowhere else to go. Luke welcomed them with open arms, but there was a small issue. Since they had lived in caves for centuries, the bright sunlight made them feel uneasy and weird. To make them feel at home, Luke moved them into the underground tunnels he had recently built. The dwarves loved it because it felt just like their old home, but way cleaner and more modern. To celebrate their arrival, the village threw a big party with plenty of drinks. This is where things got crazy. As soon as the dwarves started drinking, their shy personalities completely flipped. They became loud, started shouting like gorillas, and even began throwing Luke into the air to show their excitement. The next morning, they were back to being shy and didn't remember any of the chaos. Luke quickly made a rule that they could only drink underground from now on. As the dwarves settled in, Luke checked their special skills. Most of them were naturally good at mining and making things with metal. One young girl named Donna stood out. Even though she was 11, she looked like a small 5-year-old child. She had a very rare skill for making weapons. She was very quiet and mostly watched Luke work, but one day she showed him an old stone slab with mysterious writing on it that no one could understand. Luke has a special gift for building and managing a village, and one day he and a dwarf girl named Donna find an old stone tablet. It shows a giant weapon that people can ride inside. Luke uses his magic to build a stone version of it, but when they try it out, the shaking is so bad they both get really sick. Donna tells him she wants to build these to protect her people since they've always been pushed around. Luke realizes that to keep his village safe, he needs to be strong. Soon after, Luke spots a strange rocky area that his magic map won't cover. He sends a team led by a warrior girl named Saren and an elf named Philia to check it out. They discover a hidden dungeon. Luke wants to go, but Saren tells him to stay home where it's safe. Luke doesn't listen and hides inside a massive bag carried by Goat, the team's strongest member. While they are deep inside the cave, Saren gets suspicious and starts poking the bag. Luke is really ticklish and starts laughing, so he gets caught immediately. Suddenly, a giant wolf monster attacks the group. Before the team can react, Luke uses his village points to build a huge stone wall that turns into a golem. The golem grabs the wolf and holds it still, letting Philia end the fight easily. Luke then explains that he used a special skill to make the dungeon part of his village territory, which is why his building powers work inside the cave. Luke has a special skill called territory seizure that lets him turn any area into part of his village. To make exploring dungeons easier, he wants to use this power to build safe zones inside them. Since his friend Saren is way too overprotective and wouldn't let him go, Luke sneaks out with Goat, a veteran fighter, to reach a nearby dungeon. Once he gets there, he successfully claims the entrance as his territory. This allows him to build facilities anywhere he stands, and he uses remote-controlled earth golems to do the fighting for him. The exploration team includes Saren, a skilled fighter, Philia, a wise elf, and Noel, a young boy who is amazing with a shield. They also have 2 guys with very helpful gifts. Marco can sense nearby danger, and Kamuru has a natural instinct for finding the right path in mazes. When they hit a fork in the road, Kamuru feels that the right path is the correct one even though it seems harder. Shortly after, Marco senses a trap. Luke sends a golem ahead, which falls into a deep pitfall trap, keeping the rest of the team safe. As they move forward, a massive minotaur with a bull's head charges at them. Instead of being afraid, the group is actually happy because they think minotaur meat is delicious. Noel uses his holy shield skills to block the monster's powerful charge, while Saren and Philia finish it off with magic. Since the meat is heavy to carry, Luke builds a small warehouse right there in the dungeon to store it. which is only possible because he turned the area into part of his village. Deep at the bottom of the dungeon master, who looks like a tiny girl with wings, is fast asleep. She is having a good dream and completely ignores the loud alarms warning her that her dungeon is being taken over. Back on the second floor, which looks like ancient stone ruins, the team is attacked by a huge swarm of vampire bats. Luke quickly builds a small house for everyone to hide in. From the safety of the windows, Saren and Philia use their magic to take down the bats one by one. During the chaos, Luke sees a small, colorful shadow watching them, but it runs away before he can get a good look. Finally, the group reaches a large double door at the end of a corridor. Inside, they find two boss minotaurs waiting for them. Luke doesn't take any chances and builds a giant golem that is even bigger than the monsters. The golem grabs both minotaurs and slams them into the ground, ending the fight in seconds. They find a fancy treasure chest, but inside is just a basic steel sword. Philia is disappointed by the cheap reward and tells Luke they should find the dungeon master to negotiate for something much better. Philia explains that every dungeon follows strict rules set by the gods. If a hero clears the dungeon but refuses the treasure, the dungeon master is forced to meet them in person. Luke finds a tiny hole in the floor with miniature stairs. It's a cheap trick by the dungeon master to keep them out since only someone tiny could fit. Luke doesn't fall for it and simply uses his building powers to create a proper staircase. They head down and find a glowing crystal called the dungeon core. If this core breaks, the dungeon and its master both die. Suddenly, a tiny fairy named Allie appears. She's the dungeon master and she's terrified they've come to kill her. Luke calms her down, promising not to break anything. Allie explains that she needs dungeon points to grow her home, which she only gets when people spend time inside the dungeon. Since her dungeon is in the middle of nowhere, she's been broke and bored for ages. Luke sees a win-win situation. He uses his powers to move the entire village closer to the dungeon entrance. He then builds a tunnel connecting the village basement directly to the dungeon. He asks Doran, the leader of the dwarves, if his people want to live there. Since dwarves love underground life, they happily agree to move in. This way, Allie gets constant points, and the dwarves get a perfect home. Allie is thrilled, though she's a bit of a character, and starts asking Luke to bring handsome guys to visit her. As time passes, the village population hits 3,000 people, pushing Luke's village skill to level 7. This unlock brings new buildings like proper shops, restaurants, and a playground. Luke builds the playground and even tests the slide himself before the local kids take over. He also gets a new skill called Villager Appraisal II. When he tests it on his loyal maid Milia, it shows way too much info, including her body measurements and her secret crush on younger guys. Luke gets super embarrassed and decides to keep the skill for emergencies only. Later, Milia leads Luke to the center of the village. The dwarves and other villagers have gathered around a large object covered with a cloth. They have a big surprise waiting for him, and Goat, the strong guy of the group, gets ready to reveal what they've been working on. Luke was sent to a wasteland a year ago after his family kicked him out, but he used his special powers to turn the empty land into a successful village. To celebrate their first anniversary, the villagers and a group of skilled dwarves built a massive stone statue of him. Milia, his loyal assistant who handles village affairs, also showed him a new book called The Legend of Lord Luke. The book was filled with exaggerated stories and heroic quotes that Luke never actually said, which made him feel really embarrassed. While Luke was worrying about the book, a huge monster called a tree dragon suddenly came out of the nearby forest. It was a massive plant creature that looked just like a dragon. Luke tried to protect the village by summoning a giant stone golem to block it, but the monster just ignored the fight and kept moving. Everyone was terrified until the dragon suddenly stopped in the middle of the village field. Neril, a girl who has the special gift of understanding animals, realized the dragon wasn't there to attack. It just loved the rich, healthy soil of the village and wanted to stay there. The dragon even gave Luke a giant, rare fruit as a gift and decided to become a peaceful part of the village. Soon after, a group of famous adventurers led by a man named Alec arrived at the gates. They had heard rumors about a town appearing in the middle of the wasteland and wanted to see it for themselves. They expected the village chief to be a tough, scary warrior, so they were completely shocked when they met Luke, who looked like a kind and normal young boy. Luke welcomed them, planning to use their skills to help the village grow even more. Luke, the village chief, checked in with his dungeon master, a fairy named Ally. The dungeon was now 5 floors deep, filled with traps and boss monsters to keep adventurers busy. Luke even had a secret tunnel from his house, leading straight to his girlfriend at the bottom level. Since the dungeon earned points based on how long people stayed inside, Luke made sure the first few floors weren't too hard so people wouldn't give up and leave early. A group of 4 adventurers soon arrived at the village gates. The team consisted of Alec the warrior, Hazina the mage, Del the scout, and Kamai the priest. They expected the village chief to be a scary, rough guy, but they were shocked to meet Luke, who looked like a polite and gentle boy. Luke didn't care about fancy noble manners and immediately invited them to check out the dungeon. The adventurers couldn't believe a dungeon existed right inside a village. Luke showed them the massive apartment buildings he built to house travelers, which were way better than any typical inn. He also mentioned that the local restaurant served rare orc and minotaur meat at low prices. The group was sold. They had never seen a village this clean or well-organized, especially one where humans lived alongside elves and dwarves. Luke then gave them a deal they couldn't refuse. He told them they could get a blessing to unlock special powers at the village church for just 1 gold coin. Usually, this cost a fortune that a normal person could never afford. Using his hidden appraisal skill, Luke saw that all 4 adventurers had secret talents that matched their jobs perfectly. He introduced them to Milia, the beautiful priest who strangely wore a maid outfit to get their powers started. Meanwhile, a government official named Danto was heading back to the village. He had been lying to his boss, Lord Raoul, claiming this village didn't exist to protect Luke. When Danto and his guard Bazara finally arrived after 6 months, they were stunned. The tiny settlement had exploded into a massive city with nearly 10,000 people. The village was now a high-tech hub with clean streets and high-rise buildings. Bazara, who knew his weapons, was floored when he saw the gear for sale. The local shop was filled with top-tier armor and swords mass-produced by dwarven blacksmith. These were items that even rich nobles would struggle to find, but here, they were being sold like everyday tools.